Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to this important meeting of Trade and Environmental Sustainability Structure Discussions, TESSD, at the WTO. My name is Jisoo Yoon, and I work as a policy analyst at the Cities, Urban Policies, and Sustainable Development Division at the OECD. Today, I would like to share the work of the OECD program on decarbonizing buildings in cities and regions, and some of the key findings from the recent global survey on buildings and climate. First, let's explore the critical reasons behind our focus on decarbonization of buildings. Buildings and construction are responsible for nearly 40% of global energy-related CO2 emissions. This substantial figure highlights the urgency of implementing decarbonization strategies to mitigate climate change. In Europe alone, approximately 85 to 95% of buildings standing today will still be in use by 2050. This statistic underscores the need to concentrate our efforts on existing infrastructure to meet our decarbonization objectives. Our program, the OECD program on decarbonizing buildings in cities and regions, originated from the understanding that decarbonizing buildings is a complex challenge. It demands collaborative efforts from both national and subnational governments. Initially, we developed a comprehensive checklist of actions for these governments, which you can see on the slide. And this sets the stage for a renewed focus on decarbonizing buildings. While the conversation around building decarbonization isn't new, traditionally centered on energy savings and emission reductions, it has gained a significant momentum recently due to several factors. First, global trends. Trends such as escalating the importance of climate change in policymaking and advancements in smart technologies and demographic shift towards urbanization are creating favorable conditions for building decarbonization. Notably, the European Commission's renovation wave strategy, a component of the European Green Deal, emphasizes the importance of building renovations. And also, the current global energy crisis further highlights the need for energy-efficient buildings to reduce overall demand and support a sustainable transition. Additionally, a recent updates to the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, EPBD, in EU have increased focus on addressing energy poverty among low-income households. Beyond environmental impacts, these strategies enhance socioeconomic resilience. For example, the International Energy Agency notes that an investment of $1 million in building retrofits can generate up to 30 jobs. Reflecting this global momentum to accelerating building decarbonization, the Shio Declaration marks a significant milestone. Announced during the first Global Forum on Buildings and Climate and signed by over 70 countries, it offers a comprehensive framework for global decarbonization and climate resilience in the building sector. At a global forum, the OECD Secretary General highlighted the critical initiatives and shared insights with ministers, including 28 country profiles and buildings and policy highlights, which were based on the OECD Global Survey on Buildings and Climate. On the slide, you can see the QR code where you can have access to all country profiles, which comes across all geography of the world, as well as the OECD policy highlights. Now, I would like to delve into the findings of the survey. According to the survey, we found out that only 50% of responding countries have concrete quantitative targets. As you can see on a graph, only 29% of countries have quantitative targets on heat pumps, 14% on rooftop PVs, and 11% for insulations. In parallel, it is also important to track and monitor the policy implementation on these goals in the local level. But only 43% have these monitoring framework to track local progress. And we looked at challenges. For new buildings, introducing regulations for new buildings poses significant financial challenges, making compliance with energy efficiency and carbon requirements potentially cost prohibitive. The survey revealed that 60% of countries see economic feasibility of new measures as a primary concern. According to our survey, only 18% of responding countries put measures on mandatory renovations of worst performing buildings, highlighting challenges in standard development, financial impact, and regulatory consensus. We also asked countries their priorities on new buildings versus existing buildings. According to our survey, countries like Israel, Japan, and Canada are reported to focus on new buildings, whereas the UK, Germany, Italy focus on existing buildings. It's because the composition of building stock varies significantly across the world, and the survey highlights that all surveyed European countries have at least 50% of their building stock constructed before 1980s, with countries like Norway approaching almost 80%. Additionally, the annual rate of new construction also varies markedly between countries. These variations affect how each country prioritizes and implements decarbonization measures. Despite the existing disparities, the survey finds out that 76% of countries will prioritize existing buildings over new ones, irrespective of their geographical location. And this reflects a significant shift towards retrofitting and upgrading older buildings rather than focusing on primarily on new construction standards. To achieve net zero goals, governments need to tackle with existing buildings. Climate also plays a critical role in shaping the heating and cooling demands of buildings. Our common sense tells us colder regions naturally have higher demand for heating, whereas warmer regions focus more on cooling. For instance, countries like Brazil, Greece, Japan, and Spain have priority on cooling due to high cooling degree days, as you can see on the graph. The survey also notes, however, that despite the similar heating degree days or cooling degree days, residential emissions per capita by heating and cooling can vary significantly. This suggests that factors such as building stock age, occupant behavior, local policies play crucial roles in determining the overall environmental impact of residential heating and cooling. Especially given the importance of the heating and cooling in each country, a lot of efforts have been focusing on operational carbon. As climate change intensifies, more countries are actually shifting their focus to accommodate changing environmental conditions. For instance, countries like traditionally concerned with heating, like France, the UK, Italy, and Finland, are now beginning to place greater emphasis on cooling as their future priority. And also recognizing the growing efforts on energy efficiency, the focus on decarbonization strategies are now moving beyond operational energy use to encompass the whole life carbon of buildings. While heating remain current policy focuses, with 64% of current of countries prioritizing these areas respectively, a significant shift is now anticipated. Looking ahead, 43% of countries indicated that embodied carbon will become a priority, and 68% highlighted that circularity of building materials as a future concern. It is essential for governments to reduce not only operational carbon, but also whole life carbon to achieve net zero goals. Despite the recognition of the importance of embodied carbon, only 11% of responding countries have actually implemented a limit value on whole life carbon of buildings. This low implementation rate shows a significant gap between policy intent and action, particularly outside the front-runner countries like France, Finland, Sweden, Norway, and the Netherlands. However, there is an evidence of gradual progress. For instance, 53% of countries have developed national assessment methodologies, and 43% have established national database of environmental product declaration, EPDs. Additionally, 25% of countries now require a mandatory declaration on the environmental performance of buildings, indicating slow but steady advancements in integrating whole life carbon considerations into national building regulations. However, there are some challenges around multi-level governance. Decarbonizing buildings involves a comprehensive policy integration across government ministries. In 93% of the surveyed countries, at least 3 ministries are involved, covering energy, environment, buildings, housing, and welfare policies. This necessitates aligning policies both at the national and local levels to ensure cohesive implementation. It's also crucial to involve local stakeholders, particularly SMEs working in the built environment. However, only 11% of responding countries currently provide training programs for SMEs on life cycle carbon calculation, indicating a significant gap in capacity building. Despite the challenges, there are some good practices. So drawing from the survey result, we identified that successful cases usually take incremental step-by-step forms. And the important key here is to identify the first step of this step-by-step. And based on our assessment, we identified feasibility and impact diagnosis to be one of the drivers of the first step. Japan, for instance, focused on what is feasible for them. Japan recognized that larger architectural firms had a head start in zero energy building categories. Thus, they began with mandatory energy efficiency standards for large non-residential buildings, gradually expanding the scope to smaller buildings later. And Sweden chose to target upfront carbon emissions during construction, a significant contributor to a building's lifetime impact. Their focus on this category allows for a more immediate reduction in emissions. As you can see on the slide, they plan to expand the target models gradually. And the other way of step-by-step approach is starting from cities and scaling up to the rest of the country. We have seen that in Helsinki. They introduced carbon limit value on new constructions 2 years ahead of the national counterpart. The national government can utilize the outcome and apply to the rest of the country. In conclusion, we came up with the following recommendations. First, develop a customized step-by-step approach with concrete targets and roadmap with timelines. Second, adopt a multi-level approach such as horizontal coordination, vertical coordination, and public-private partnerships. And the third, engage in international collaboration to understand the status of your country and learn best practice from the others. So that is all for my side. And if you have any questions regarding the survey or need any clarification, please do reach out to us to the emails that you see on the slide. And thank you so much for having me here today. And I wish you a very fruitful discussion for the rest of the session. Thank you so much.